Hey there everybody, it's Kevin here from Happy Beard Games and you're watching GAMERpiece Theatre. Today's focus is on the Atari 2600 port of the classic Missile Command. Yeah, let's check this out today and have some fun. Missile Command, the classic apocalyptic shooter game where you defend your planet from nuclear invasion. Pretty intense stuff for the 80s. Now, as someone like myself who was born in 1990, I wasn't there to experience the 1980s myself. But there was a threat of nuclear war, and this is very serious, guys. This is real deal stuff. Nuclear war was a reality in the 80s, and it still kind of is today, and it's kind of weird. But back in the day, there was a lot of paranoia about World War, like a World War III, nuclear attack from bombs, nuclear fallout, stuff like that. How would we survive apocalypse? How would we be able to last through a nuclear bomb attack? And that was a reality back in the 80s. Like, that was like when it was first getting really big in terms of paranoia and like the doomsday clock was ticking. Not necessarily where it started, but where it was leading up to at its peak was in the 80s from what I can tell. And in this game, Missile Command, it kind of plays off that paranoia by having a game where you're defending a planet and its bases from missiles, nuclear missiles. They look like nuclear missiles, and it's called Missile Command. So you kind of get that idea, especially in the 80s when this game was made, and you get that idea and that sense of this is what the pop culture reference is for Missile Command. But with all that important history aside, the game manual tells a different story slightly than the actual history of Missile Command. So let's read from the manual the brief story, the backstory of the game. Aliens from the planet of Krytol have begun an attack on the planet Zardon. The Krytolians are warriors out to destroy and seize the planet of Zardon. Zardon is the last of the peaceful planets. The Zardonians are skillful and hardworking people. Their cities are built up and rich in resources. It is truly a planet void of crime and violence. So we've got a peaceful Zardon planet and a violent Krytol planet with aliens. Zardon has built a powerful defense system. Several anti-ballistic missile bases have been established within the cities of Zardon. The Zardonians are ready for this attack and are prepared to fight to save their cities. As base commander, it is your responsibility to protect and defend 6 cities on the planet of Zardon. The Krytolians have begun firing interplanetary ballistic missiles. They are aiming at your cities and missile bases. Your only defense is to fire back with anti-ballistic missiles. But watch out, the Krytolians are sly. They also have cruise missiles. Cruise missiles look like satellites, but they are just as deadly as the interplanetary ballistic missiles. Use your anti-ballistic missiles, EBMs, to stop the enemy before your happy and harmonious planet is destroyed. So they took what is happening in real life, potentially, with nuclear war, and they turned it into a sci-fi setting. And you can kind of see the analogy there, but in the terms of gameplay, it's a very fun action shooter game for the classic arcades. What you see on the game screen of Missile Command is a single cannon on the bottom center of the screen. This cannon is what you use to shoot from to destroy the oncoming missiles and other enemies. On the game screen, you also have 6 bases that you are defending during gameplay. The game essentially has 2 objectives, 2 things that you're working on during the gameplay. One of them is to destroy everything that's coming in from above. Everything on the ground, the planet below, is yours, so you want to destroy anything that's coming in from the sky. Any enemy ships, any enemy weapon types that are falling down from the sky, you want to destroy. And there's a twist to the gameplay shooting in this, so that's a really cool, important part of this game, but we'll get to that in a few minutes. The second objective, which is debatably more important, is to defend. You want to defend your bases on the planet below, because if you run out of all your bases, it's game over. Focusing on Objective 1, attacking, is an important aspect of the game Missile Command. Now with Missile Command, you've got a limited amount of ammunition, so that's a little bit different than most shooters such as Space Invaders or Galaga, Galaxian, those type of games. This game has a limited ammo, so you have to keep your eye on the ammo count. Thankfully, you have enough of it that it hardly ever comes into a problem unless you're just shooting randomly or if you don't know what you're doing. The way that you shoot in Missile Command is different than most classic arcade games. It's not a single shot directly straight forward ahead of you. It's actually more like you can target anywhere on the screen and your cannon will shoot directly to that spot. It's a really nice way of gameplay. You have a lot of control over what you're shooting. It also adds a bit of fun and uniqueness to this game Missile Command, because this is one of the few games that does this. And it does it iconically. There's a little bit of a catch to be able to shoot anywhere on screen freely, and that is when you shoot, you're not shooting a laser or a bullet, you're shooting more like a bomb, missile, explosion type weapon. This type of weapon will shoot at something and then create a radius of an explosion around it, which will also destroy anything that touches it. It's a really neat effect that looks good on screen and helps you out a lot during gameplay. It's a key element of the gameplay that makes up Missile Command. So when you're playing Missile Command, you want to make sure to think before you shoot, so that way you remember the blast radius of the explosion that you're shooting at can hit more than one enemy, even if they're not really there just yet, because the way the missiles fall down into the explosion can destroy them and help you win the level. Now back to the second objective of Missile Command, which is defense. Defending your bases from the oncoming missile attacks is an essential part of the gameplay because it helps you stay alive. If you want to get a high score and you want to keep getting those points and continue on playing, you have to use defense. Now defense can be done in multiple ways. You can just destroy any missiles on screen if you're really good, and sometimes on the earlier levels that's an easier feat to accomplish. But later on, as you get more missiles incoming and it gets harder and harder to keep them off from the ground, you're gonna start losing some bases. What I have done in the past for defense in Missile Command is to let a few bases go. Yeah, I know that sounds kind of bad realistically, but in the video game world, it's okay. It's okay to let a few bases go. So what I usually do is pick a side of the screen, the left or the right, and one of those sides, it's okay to go. And once that side's gone, then I focus on all the missiles that are incoming on the right side of the screen. I know there's less bases, and I know that doesn't sound good, but if you just keep those bases on one side of the screen safe, it's a lot easier to focus on than the entire game screen. By using this defense tactic, it will help you from multitasking during the gameplay. You don't want to move the cursor from right to left, left to right during the gameplay too much because the cursor can be quite slow. There's actually another main reason why defending in this method works so well, and that is because you can earn extra bases. Extra bases will be earned every 10,000 points during the gameplay, and you can see your score up on the top of the screen. An important part that might be overlooked by newer gamers for Atari 2600 games is the manual. Yes, the instruction booklet. We're going to check out this booklet real briefly and see what its importance is to the game Missile Command. One of the most important parts of the manual is in the very last page for this one, and it is the game select matrix. Whoa. Yeah, it's really an important part of the game because when you're playing Atari, you have these switches on the console, and these switches allow you to switch from game to game. Now each game is actually different, and you don't know what they are because it doesn't tell you on screen. There's no help, there's no tutorial, there's no explanation. The explanation is here in the manual. You can also find it online, of course. But on the manual, it's a really nice grid that shows you what everything does and how it plays out. There are two different types of cruise missiles in the game Missile Command. These cruise missiles are a specific special type of enemy that you'll fight against in this game. But there's two different variations of them, and you can only have one of them active on each game mode at a time. So there's the dumb cruise missile and the smart cruise missile. The dumb cruise missile will kind of fall towards you in a different pattern than the main missiles. It'll come towards you, and you can destroy it. It has seemingly a mind of its own as it's a cruise missile. On the other hand, the smart cruise missile has a bit more defense than it seems. It follows the same patterns as the dumb cruise missile, but when you go to shoot it, you have to be exactly on target to destroy it. If you're below it or above it with that blast radius that your missiles send out, it will actually bounce the missile up away from it. So you have to be a perfect shot, very precise, to destroy the smart cruise missiles. There's also other options you can change by switching the game type. There are slow control and fast control game modes, which allow you to move the cursor faster or slower across the screen. I usually prefer the faster control, but if you want the game to be easier, use the slow control. And if you want the game to be even easier than that, check out Children Mode. The easy and slow-paced gameplay of Children's Mode can allow younger people to get interested in the game Missile Command, or allow newcomers to get interested in the game as well. When I played it, even though I played the other modes first, I had a very easy time playing Missile Command, and could easily play a game that lasted about 20 minutes to half an hour. I racked up a maximum of over 200,000 points on the children's game mode alone. That was kind of a lot. It took a long time, guys. There is also game mode settings for 2-player, which is an alternating 2-player gameplay. On each gameplay, one person plays, it shows their score, then the second person on the other controller plays, and it shows their score separately. You can use this to compete against each other and find the high scores between you and your friend. It's always good, especially back in the early days, to have your home console games really play just like the arcade originals. While they are actually very similar and close to one another, the arcade and Atari home versions differ in a few places. Aside from obvious things such as better graphics and slightly more sound, the arcade original has 3 Missile Command posts, one in the middle, and one on the edge of each screen. Each Missile Command post has its own separate ammo instead of one that reloads as in the Atari version. This seems small, but can actually change up the gameplay strategy a bit, which makes this the most important change. When your Missile Command post gets shot, it will deplete all of the ammo and destroy it for that round. It'll be back again in the next round if you survive. This definitely increases the difficulty of the gameplay overall, as it limits the amount of shots that you can use from your Missile Command posts. Another very notable difference is in the controls. On Atari you have the joystick controller, but in arcades there was a trackball controller. A trackball is essentially a ball like a pool ball, and it's set in the controller that tracks its movements similar to that of a mouse on a computer. The trackball in Missile Command is used for aiming and works well enough that to me it's a reason to play this game. It feels great. The trackball in arcades is definitely the way to go and offers much faster movements, and the game seems to respond quicker to that control as well. While the Atari home version is by no means slow, the arcade version offers precise control. I was surprised at how well the Atari holds up without a trackball. On the Atari collection for the PlayStation 2 that I've been playing for the arcade port here, the controls are also much faster than on the Atari 2600. Other smaller differences include enemy types. There are jet-like planes that fly horizontally throughout the screen which you can shoot at for extra points. There are also pod-like ships that have a similar pattern to the jets. Because of the extra enemy types, the point system must also be different, so a high score in the arcade is not fair to compare to the home version. The arcade version has a kill screen at the 256th wave, and the Atari Games Manual lists up to 15 separate waves for the Atari 2600 version. And that's about it for tonight's GAMERpiece Theatre on Happy Beard Games. We checked out the Atari 2600 home port of the arcade classic Missile Command. We checked out its comparison to the arcade, we checked out some gameplay, some tactics, some objectives, some backstory, and direct gameplay of Missile Command. Thanks for watching, everybody. To support my channel, please be sure to give this video a like and share it with your friends. To continue watching Happy Beard Games, be sure to hit that subscribe button and check the bell. Alright guys, thanks for watching once again. Bye!